Right, this video is a little bit forced. I don't like the amount of sludge that I saw at the top of that cinder head. Now I'm cleaning it up very thoroughly, as you may have seen in a previous episode. But what I'm going to do is take the sump off. It's not too difficult. I've done some of it off camera, but I thought I'd explain what I'm doing. The sump, for me, there's not as much oil that came out of that sump as I expected. I'm going to investigate why, and we will see the results. But I think it would be beneficial to take that sump off anyway. The head is off. There is an idea that I have, which I'm going to explain as this episode goes on, which may help install a decent head gasket and hope that, well, as a result of finding out that the liners are unequal, but they are at least flush with the block. I suspect that some minor overheating has occurred, but I don't think it's horrifically bad. We're going to look at the oil rail, and we may upgrade that. I'm going to see how I feel about that as the episode goes on. So it's one of these bloggy style episodes where I'm just doing bits and pieces and put it on camera, and then it will come out as an episode. Things are going okay at the moment, so yeah, we'll just press on with this. Basically, what you need to do is, we've already taken the exhaust manifold, obviously, to take the head off, so that's already slackened. What I suggest you do is you go away halfway up the car, you take off the two rubber exhaust mounts, and then that will allow the exhaust to drop, because obviously the exhaust goes under the sump, so that you've got enough clearance to take out the sump. And there's just a load of little bolts, 10mm bolts. Take them out, a couple of 13mm bolts on the flywheel, the bell housing. Take them two out, and it will come off quite nicely. You might need a pry bar just to crack it off. And then we're going to cut and see the state of the sump. Well, this is not entirely unexpected, considering that the head gasket has gone on this car, and there would be some, well, I'd expect there to be some coolant in the oil system. Now, when I did the initial drain of the engine block, the oil was pretty good. There was some mayonnaise, as you saw in the drain pan, and I thought most of it had actually gone out. Turns out the reason that the engine oil, the fresh engine oil that I put in probably about a month ago or so now, a couple of months ago at least for this video, at the time of this video, the oil changed colour extremely quickly. Now, I expected that, but the oil pressure issues at the top of the engine, which I suspect is what is causing the tappets to knock so badly, is all of this. Because as you can see, this is the sump. It is pretty easy to take the sump off. I did it off camera, and there's a load of bolts all going all the way around. There's two bolts that go, I think these two bolts, this is the bell housing that connects to the gearbox, okay? These are two longer bolts, but all these other bolts are very short ones. They're 10mm bolts, and there's two 13s that go this way. Once you take them two out and take the mounting off, which I believe is in a box just over here, this mount, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and then the sway bar will come off with one big bolt through there. So just take these off, take the sway bar, hook it out of the way, and then you can take this sump off. Obviously this is part of the exercise that I'm probably going to do anyway, but yeah, this is really bad. I mean, I'm going to show you what has actually fallen in my drain pan just very carefully. I mean, you can see it. It's absolute sludge. I mean, that is part coolant, part sludge. I mean, look at it. Now, I'm quite hopeful, looking at the cams, the camshaft, that the whole head actually, is most of this sludge has not moved from the sump. It has actually stayed at the bottom of the sump, and the fresh oil has just sat on the top. And because of how sludgy this is,
it hasn't got picked up by the oil strainer through the oil rail, the filter and the pump. I'm probably going to have to change the oil filter anyway, as a matter of course as changing the engine oil. But this is yet another problem. We are going to have to think about how we clean this. I've got a couple of ideas, maybe petrol. I would a petrol to soften this, because this is the worst I've seen in a long time. I mean, I've seen worse where this is, I've seen engines where this isn't just coolant, by the way, mixing in this which has caused this. This is lack of oil changes, as I said before, as I have seen with the cylinder head before. But yeah, this is pretty poor. I'm glad I caught this engine, because it may not have been an engine for too much longer. I'm not really concerned about the lower part of the engine, the bearings. I'm really not concerned about that. So I will cut back to when this is hopefully cleaned. I'm gonna put some petrol in here, let it soak, and then hopefully more of it will just tip out and slide off, because literally if I tilt this, nothing will come out. But yeah, I mean, I have actually seen worse. I've seen engines where it's actually like, you know, you get this sort of sludge in the camshafts, to the point where the camshafts look as if they're going to struggle to turn. Really bad. I will leave this there and cut back to the next shot, possibly of me cleaning this up, because this is not nice.
The other side of this, which I was actually having a look at doing, I didn't intend to strip the cam ladder off the cylinder head and take the cams out, but there was a lot more sludge here than I really wanted, and the cleaning that I showed you before in a previous video, I don't think it was good enough to my standards. So I've cleaned the faces off. This has got, you've got to put a bead of Hylamar, very thin, and then basically when you put the cam ladder back on, you just literally push your finger and roll it across. You're supposed to use a roller, but make sure that these holes, 1 2 3 4, you know, these little holes here, these are the feed holes for the hydraulic tappets. I'm going to show you that now. And basically once you've got the cams out, you take them out like that, and that's basically where's the feed hole? There you go, it's there. That's where the oil runs in and goes into the piston of the tappet. But the oil hole is just where my finger is, so you've got that there and it goes down there. Make sure, just blow it through with an airline, make sure it's clear. And that tappet, these tappets are pretty good. I've checked a good few of them now, and I'm happy that the sludge from the bottom of the engine, it's not really reached these. These are pretty clean, and I can't move that with my finger. That's what you want. You do not want them being squishy. That's not, ideally if they're squishy, it means they haven't got enough oil in. That's what I've been told. They should be nice and hard. You shouldn't be able to push them physically up and down. But I've basically gone over all the tappets and had a look inside. What you do, and there's other videos of this on YouTube. I'm not going to show you this because plenty of people have done this already. How to clean tappets, easy. You just smash that against a block of wood, a piece of cardboard on a block of wood. The piston, that piston will literally drop out because it's held in by a snap ring, and then all the oil will just come out. And what you do is you unscrew 2 halves of that piston, or just use an airline to make them come apart. Clean inside the piston, make sure there's no sludge, put the piston back together with its spring, and then you fill the bucket with oil, and then you push the piston back in so it snaps in. That's it. That's all you need to do. That is literally all you need to do. And I'd say blow through these airlines, make sure the oil ways are clean, and obviously clean the cam carrier thoroughly as well. And then you're done, and then your tappets are clean. Now I am going to envisage some sort of knocking on startup, because even though I've filled them as best as I can, if you can see here, that one's a bit squishy. That means there's not enough oil in that one. There's a few like that, unfortunately. I'm not going to take them back out. I'll just do them once, and it is as simple as that. Now, when you put all this back on, as I say, use I think it's Loctite 674, something like that, or Hylamar, just a little tiny bead. You literally run a bead along this edge. I think there's one, you run it along this edge here, okay, and along this edge. Do not block this bit. This is an oil way. There's an oil way right here, and I'll just show you on the ladder. Do not block that oil way, okay? This is why you've got to get the Hylamar. Just hold on, pop that on there very gently. This is why you've got to get the Hylamar on this side and that side very carefully, and roll it with your finger, just a tiny bead, because you don't want it going in there. And don't use silicone, for God's sake. That stuff will just literally, as soon as you squash it down, it will go into this oil channel, and all your holes for your tappets, well, these holes will be unblocked, but they're not going to get any oil because the whole rail is blocked, and then your tappets are going to knock. That's really bad. And your bearing supports as well, your races for your camshaft. You don't want that. You don't want this you know, wearing out. I mean, considering I'm quite happy with the bearings here, which tells me that I suspect the big end bearings will be unaffected, and the mains bearings at the bottom will be unaffected by the sump issue over there previously. But yeah, just a little bead of Hylamar around all the spark plug holes, because you don't want oil going in the wells. People say it's the cam cover that leaks into the spark plugs. Well, in some cases, in some cars, yes, but in this design, it could be the cam ladder, and these cam ladders are very known for doing this. But a little bead of Hylamar where my finger is along the edge to the seals. These seals, by the way, some people say change them. There's nothing wrong with these. They don't leak. I'm just going to clean them up and put them back on. I'm not spending any money on that side of things. It's not necessary. Yes, it's good practice while it's off, but it's not necessary. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with these seals. Just make sure it's nice and clean on the grooves. But there's a little bit of like leftover remnants of sludge in the corners, but it's really nothing. I could get some carb clean on that, but I don't think I'm going to bother, because it's not tacky and it's not going to congeal. It's just something that fresh engine oil will actually clean out, and the intention is the engine oil will be changed after a few months anyway. As like, I'm going to use it as running in oil, put it that way. Yeah, so basically you want a bead sort of coming, because these are the bolts that hold the cam ladder on. These are just bolt holes. What I would do is put a bead around there, and then just around there, and then goes all the way around, and then just the slightest bead on the edge. That's it, because this is the oil way here, okay, the one that runs here, okay, and then you want one that goes around this bolt, and then there, like that. And if you follow that line, that's all good. I think you've got to also do another line here, if I'm right in thinking. Yeah, no, there's an oil channel there, so you don't want to do that actually. So what you do is you go around here like that, then up here and around there, just to seal this oil channel. This is the oil channel, and that's really it as far as this goes. We'll put it all back together, and right, I'm going to go on and get that oil rail off. Right, you join me under the car, and we have the bottom of the engine. And what we've got to do first, now this is the oil rail where my finger is. It's held on by these 8mm bolts onto the main ladder frame, which is something that a lot of Zetec engines latterly used. I think this is the idea that gave the idea that Ford copied. We've got two 8mm bolts holding the baffle on. Sorry, the exhaust is partly in the way here. We take the baffle off. As you can see, quite a bit of oil still come out. The pickup, why do I keep calling it the baffle? I do not know. We'll take the pickup out, and then we'll drop the ladder. There is evidence of antifreeze. I'll just point that up there, see if I can get some light. if I can show a bit more light. No, can't get you up there. Ridiculous. No, there we go. Now, I can't see too much going on. Not particularly here anyway. No, it looks actually rather clean. It looks as you would expect from the bottom of an engine. But as I say, there's just evidence of a little coolant. What I'm going to do, I'm going to check around the bottom of the liners, if I can get my head right up there and have a look, and we'll see if anything needs to be done. I will give the flywheel a bit of a clean. I know that the torsion dampers may make a bit of a rattle. They are prone to that, but that's a gearbox out job. That is that's a job for another day. It will get looked at. No doubt I will be taking the gearbox slightly aside that day, or maybe even off. That'll be fun. Yeah, so we are going to take those two 10mm bolts out and go from there. That was easy. I don't think they're held on very tightly at all. Well, that was easy. No, I just had to go. There we go, that was easy. God, it's so slippy I can't even twist my ratchet. So I'll just drop this out. Right, those two bolts are loose, so we should be able to pull the thing. I'm thinking that's just going to pull. Yeah, it has. You just got to give it a twist. There's a good O-ring on this, I tell you. There we go. And no oil's come out. Yeah, that's you've got a bit of an O-ring there as usual. Ooh. See, again, this is why you do these sort of jobs. That wasn't nice. Yeah, so now we've got access to the rail. So we've got one bolt there, two. I think there's only a few bolts holding this on actually. So I'll take these out now. Excuse me, my hands. Squarely and done. Okay, so there's only two bolts, the one at either end. There's no third bolt in the middle. But looking at the oil that's dripped out, it's actually pretty good oil. Just come on. And this basically, this gallery feeds the oil filter and then it goes to the pump. Right, oh, got this situation where it's leering. Oops, wait a minute, just leer it to one side. And then put the bolt down. And then come around here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this off camera, but this is basically just gonna drop off. Oh my goodness, it is so messy, these jobs. They're just, my phone is covered in oil, everything is covered in oil. I mean, so that baffles quite, yeah. Yep, I mean, that is well and truly done for. We are going to get the uprated version, which is much more stiffer than that rail. It is something that powertrain at MG Rover built the K-series and designed it. Now we're inside. I don't know why I brought this in, because I don't really intend to keep this oil rail once the new one is installed, but we'll keep it for now, but I'm not going to clean it up. The baffle, I'm just going to actually put the torch this way so you can clearly see what the issue might be. Yeah. Slightly blocked, isn't it? That is not going to help. That is 100% partially blocked. Wow. Yeah, that is that's bad. That is not going to help with oil pressure. I wonder why that might have been tappy when I actually started the car and drove it around for the first time. Yeah, obviously I did that off camera before I shot the first video of announcing this new project, but it is definitely a project because this car needs help, definitely, and it's getting it. And hey presto, after many, many hours of scrubbing and dirt and crap on the floor, crap in there, oh dearie me, this has to be the muckiest job I've ever done. It is nice and clean now. I've actually not used petrol, I've actually used white spirit, and I've actually cleaned all of the inside of the actual sump. There's only a kind of a tiny little areas here. I don't really worry about them. Yeah, just a little tiny bit there. I might get that out later. I've whacked the mount back on. I don't think I needed to take it off. I just needed to take the center bolt that goes through and hooks into the swing arm, the swing mount, I should say, or the I can't remember what they call it now, but it's just stop the engine and gearbox swinging. But let's say the back side is absolutely fantastic. That's been cleaned up on that side. That's all nice and cleaned up. Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And the baffle, why do I keep calling it the baffle? Goodness me. The gauze strainer, which sits... do you know what? I'm convinced because of the gunk on the top of this, because it sits like that in the sump. That cannot have been picking up much clean oil. There is clean oil. I'm pretty sure that it would have been picking up some oil, but yeah, it would have been starving a lot of parts of the car. I mean, the oil pressure light goes out, so clearly there was enough pressure within the system to indicate that there's not an issue. But then again, oil pressure lights are a bit, they're set a bit low. I think the only time they actually come on is, well, your engine's basically gone if it comes on. And I think that's how low the pressure has to be. But that is now nice and clean in there. I have washed that out in spirits as well. It's just all nice and dry. And that is ready to go back in. I'm really pleased. So I'm just going to pop the bolts back in if I can find the bolts. Yeah, 2 bolts for the baffle, 2 bolts for the oil rail. And we will wait for the oil rail to come. And then I will conclude this video. Just alongside this video, I am about to put the cam ladder back on, unless I've confused the actual camshafts, which I might have done. No, I haven't. I know which one's which. Basically, that's the amount of Hylamar you need to put around. I know sometimes I've gone a bit thick in a couple of places. I need to correct some of that there. That was a bit too thick. As long as you go thin enough to create a seal, but not thick enough so when you push it down, it goes into the oil way and the oil holes, which is the mistake the last person made on this, which is quite interesting considering the head gasket has not been disturbed because they wouldn't have put silicone in the factory. But yes, that's a nice, decent bead of Hylamar, okay, around all the areas you need to go, okay. A couple of areas I need to just go over again just to make sure it's absolutely right. It is really important to get these things done properly first time, and until I'm happy with it, it won't go on. But then when we do, we put the camshafts at, I think it's 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock or something like that, and then we can start putting all the bolts back in. Okay, the next step is to make sure that the camshafts are in the 4 o'clock and the 8 o'clock position. Okay, so the inlet is 4 o'clock and the exhaust is 8 o'clock. Sorry about the lighting. And then you put your camshafts down. Make sure that you do lubricate the races on the camshaft ladder. Okay, make sure they're located, and literally we're just going to whack it on now. Right, so if I just pop that down there, just put it hand tight for now, just so that it's located. Okay, now what's going to happen is we're going to tighten all these bolts in sequence. There is a sequence of how to do it. There we go. We've got a load of bolts hanging around there by the Hylamar, and you just do it in sequence. So we go from the edge, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll work in on that diagram. And that really is all there is to it. You torque them up to 10 Newton meters,
and hopefully the camshafts will push down the valves, and then yeah, and then it should all be nicely done and clean. This is looking amazing. If you go back to how it looked before, it's just a completely different engine, or cylinder head. It's all full of gunk and rubbish, but now it's really clean, and I'm glad it shows it here. Right, that's great. Now, the reason why you torque them evenly is because obviously when you torque everything down, the camshafts are going to push on tappets, and they're going to open some of the valves at the bottom, depending on which ones are open. But this is basically pretty much the safe position, and we've now set that by torquing it up like that. Some of the valves would have opened. The only thing we're going to miss out on, these seals. Now, sometimes people replace these. I know these don't weep, so I'm going to refit them. And to be honest with you, I've never known camshaft seals to really weep unless they're visibly damaged, and I've inspected the rear ones. The front ones are in black, and the rear ones that go down here are in red, but I can't see any damage, and I've just cleaned them up to just degrease them to fit them, because obviously degreasing that area because it's going to sit in that area. But literally I would get, what is this, a 30mm socket, which is pretty much the diameter, and just tap it in with a rubber hammer, and it will be really nice. So that is done. This is now ready to be fitted back to the car, so that's another box ticked. And now we'll cut to some more footage elsewhere. And about half an hour later, as my torch is showing you, the block is really nice and clean now. I've just made sure that some of the oil holes have not got any browny sludge in them. One of them, I think one of these, may have had some suspicious sludge, but it's all been cleaned out with carb cleaner. GT85 on the suspension just to clean it up, because I've done a lot of wire brush and a lot of cleaning, and now look how good it's come up. This is an absolute gem of a car. I mean, look at that anti-roll bar. There's hardly a fleck of corrosion on it. The subframe has come up so nice, glossy black. Steering rack clean. Drive shaft's clean. It's all looking fantastic under here. I'm so pleased the way this is turning out. Right, finally we have the delivery of a very important item, and this is the new, stronger, uprated oil rail, which was designed for the 1.8 litre, preferably for Freelander applications, mainly because of the way the gearbox system works in the Freelander. It does put a more torsion and pressure on the 1.8k series, and Land Rover along with Rover came up with this solution just at the back end of when Rover was actually collapsing, but the development went into making this beyond when Rover collapsed. That was Land Rover's point in this, and the idea is that oil rail is much stiffer than the original one. It's made of a slightly different alloy construction, much more stiffer, 25% stiffer apparently, and it will allow the head bolts to clamp more evenly down on the head and cure a lot of issues. You can either use this with the uprated bolts with the multi-layer gasket if you have equal liners. My car does not have that. I have to use the elastomer. There is no reason why you can have this and the stiffer bolts with the original gasket. Equally, it was designed for the multi-layer gasket, but a lot of owners have done this and to good effect. So I'm going to do the same as well. I really do hope it has an effect, and I'm just going to, for demonstration purposes, weigh both of them, and I'll just show you exactly what the difference is. This is a bit oily, as it usually is, but I'm going to put it down on here. 901 grams. The uprated one, 1,173. I think it's substantially more. That's like 250 grams more. It is more heavy, it is more stiffer, and that is what you want. So we are going to bolt this to the engine. There are two bolts, one there and one there, and they are torqued up to 9 Newton meters. Right, day of fitment. Cleaned out the sump,
all the bolts are being cleaned, all good. Cleaned out baffle, no gunky sludge, and a new oil rail. And we're going to pop it on with some Hylamar. These later models don't have a sump gasket, so I'm going to put some Hylamar on here. And what I'm going to do now is you have to put some Hylamar. I don't think they did this in the factory, but apparently you have to put some Hylamar around all these. Now, to be honest with you, that's what the Haynes manual says, but I didn't see any evidence of that. And the truth is, I don't want any Hylamar blocking that main oil gallery, so I'm literally just going to bolt it straight in. To be perfectly honest, the 2 bolts that hold it on are literally guide bolts, just to make sure that if you take the head bolts out to take the head off, it doesn't fall. That's what they're there for. But once those stretch bolts are torqued up, this oil rail is pulled right up. I can't see any risk of losing any oil whatsoever. And there was no, as I say, there was no evidence of any gasket on the original, so clearly it doesn't need to be put on. So I'm not going to do that, because I'm not risking putting Hylamar straight in there, because this one here is quite narrow actually. No, that's not going to happen. But I'll put Hylamar on the sump naturally, because that's what's required, but that's it. You fit the tall thin long bolts that go through that bit there. Right, line up the hole. There we go, and just thread it all the way in by hand. Just wind it in. And the key here is to torque it up to 9, both of them to 9 Newton meters, like that. I shouldn't actually, you don't click it twice, that will damage the torque wrench, so just click it once. Don't do what I've done. There we go, done. That is literally it. 9 Newton meters is barely hand tight. It's literally just to keep it on, because if the head bolts come out, if these aren't tightened up, the oil rail will drop and you're in trouble, so you have to take the sump off. But because the head bolts would literally come through probably about that much, it will clamp the oil rail and sandwich the whole thing together. It's really clever design actually, really clever. No, I almost forgot to say, we've got the pickup strainer. Now it's literally held on. You literally just push it in to the oil block with that. Just push that bit where they got the O-ring on, push it into the oil block, and then you've got these 2 bolts that just hold it to the rail. It's a 2-second job really. Just tighten that, and just tighten that. I really do love this oil rail. It's nice and silvery aluminium-esque. Well, it's an alloy actually. Can't remember what sort of alloy it is. Well, it's a different alloy to the original, much stronger. There you go. That oil gauze is now in. It's just worth quickly noting that these 2 long bolts basically go through this bell housing here, where they come up this way. Okay, those are the 2 long bolts. They need torquing up to about 30 Newton meters. The rest of them, the 10 mils that go all the way around, 25 Newton meters, but we'll do it in sequence. So basically, that's the front of the car where the oil plug is. So that's the crankshaft pulley on that side, and this is the flywheel side. Basically, you go in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's it. Okay, and obviously you got the 2 bolts that go in underneath this side here, the 2 13s, but they're quite important, but we'll go through that in a second. So first of all, I'm just going to put some Hylamar on the seam. Now you just smudge it in. It just, at the end of the day, when you sandwich it together, this is what's going to happen. But what you're doing is you're giving it a bit of a chance to actually not mix with the engine oil, and you get a nice even coating. Sometimes it doesn't come out that easily, but it doesn't smudge that easily, but you know, it's a bit gloopy there, so we'll just add a bit more there, put a bit more there with your finger. There we go. All we need is a smudge, don't need too much, but just go all the way around. And you've got any excess, wipe the excess off and transfer it to another place. See, there's a bit of excess there.
wipe it off, transfer it to a place where there's not as much, you know, use what you got.
Right, this is the tricky bit, getting the first bolt back in. So just gonna try and get it round the exhaust. Not damaging the whole thing. Right, lovely, that's done. That's job one done. Now we've got to get it in position. Yeah. There we go. Done. Bit of a fiddle. We'll try and get the first bolt. Whee! See what I mean? We'll try and get the first bolt back in before it falls down again. Well, he says hand tight, just cheat by using this gun. It speeds things up a lot. Just tighten it up to when it sort of comes to a stop. Just tighten that down. Okay, lovely, lovely. Just is it extension? Once all that's done, don't forget to put the sway bar link back in. I'll just put that back there. Might have to tilt the engine backwards to do this, but there's a bolt that just, there we go, and then just wind it all the way back in. I don't know what the torque setting on this, I'll find out. It's probably like 50-60 newton meters, and then tighten it up with a 15mm ratchet. Just tighten it until it bonds up. 20. Trans. There we go. Done. Yeah, that's nice. Good. Done. That is one shiny looking sump. I'm not surprised. I should, you know, it should be clean because I've cleaned it that much. And as you can see, we have got traces of Hylamar squealing just around the seam, which is what you want to see really, which is why I smudged it. But that looks fantastic now, and that is ready now for a really nice first start in God knows how long. I've actually lost count of how long it's been here, but yeah, that's great. That will benefit the car enormously now. I mean, it's all been cleaned and degunked and the oil rail's been put in. Right, onwards and upwards. Now we've got to put the head on. See you soon, guys.